Welcome everybody to AWOCs Unite. And here we are as part of the York 50 Plus Festival, and we have assembled a crowd of people. But what we're going to do first of all is hear from the speakers, and then we'll stop the recording, which will go on to ListerInteractions, the YouTube channel. And then after that, we'll just have a friendly, everybody can have a chat about what's going on, etc. So first of all, let's hand over to Kirsty, who will tell us all about the National AWOC. Over to you, Kirsty.
Thank you, Sue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the founding of AWOC and how it came about. I'm so sorry that I can't stay for the whole session, but I'm actually doing my day job today, so I'm kind of whipping in quickly before I have to whip out again. But I thought it would be helpful to kind of give a bit of context to how AWOC came about. And then later on, I'm sure that Paul Gordon, who's chair of the AWOC Board of Trustees, will be able to fill you in a bit more on what's happening nationally at the moment. So I have worked on issues around ageing and older people for 30 years nearly now, about 30 years. And it wasn't something that I ever related to my personal circumstances of being unable to have children. Because I'm childless, not by choice. And I'd spent many years working with older people, going to lots of meetings, lots of policy events, listening to lots of research. And then one day I was actually having coffee with a friend of mine who worked at Age UK, and we were having a coffee, and she was caring for her mum, and she was having a good old vent about the problems that she was having with her mother's care. So her mother had fallen, she'd been taken into hospital, and my friend Diane was going in a couple of times a day, to make sure that her mum was okay. Not because anybody in the hospital was being deliberately awful to her, because they weren't, but it was a very typical thing. The hospital was very busy, the nurses were very overstretched. So it was little things like there wasn't really anyone to help her mum eat. There wasn't really anyone to kind of, no one was really helping her, to go to the loo. No one was kind of replenishing her water jug, all that sort of thing. And so Diane was there every day kind of making sure that all that sort of thing was being done. And then when the time came for her mum to be discharged, obviously there were lots of meetings, there were lots of forms, there were lots of discussions, all of which were being held with Diane around her mum's bed and all that sort of thing. And Diane was kind of filling out all the forms and answering all the questions and all of that. Then when her mum was discharged home, the care package that was put in place fell apart fairly quickly. Her mum was only given one carer because there was a hoist that the carer was supposed to use to help her mum get in and out of bed, but unfortunately when the hoist arrived, it didn't have a sling. And when Diane phoned up social services, they said, oh yeah, sorry, we're really sorry, we can't get a sling to you for a week. However, if you can drive to the depot, we'll give you one. So Diane drove to the depot, picked up the sling, and obviously, but she was still having to go in several times a day once her mum was home, because the carer was only allocated a short period of time. There wasn't enough time to do all the things that needed to be done. And so when she was having a good old vent to me, she kind of was saying, God knows what my mum would do if I wasn't here. And for me, that was a real light bulb moment, because at that time, I was kind of coming into my late 40s. I'd realised that I wasn't actually going to be able to have children. And I just thought, yeah, well, what would your mum do? What would happen to your mum if you weren't there running around, making phone calls, filling out forms, doing all of those things? What would happen if what would happen to your mum? What would she do? What would I do? What would happen to me? And that kind of set off, a big train of thought. And because I'd worked on the field of age and ageing for a long time, I knew a lot of people. And when I spoke to all the people that I knew and said, has this ever come up anywhere? Pretty much everyone said, No, we've never thought about it. It hasn't come up in policy discussions. It doesn't come up in research because it's not looked at as a particular characteristic. It's not something we've ever really considered. And at that point, I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll write. So I blogged. So I wrote a blog about it, and that blog was picked up by The Guardian. And off the back of that, people started to get in touch and say, I had no idea about this, but actually, this is me. Or I hadn't really thought about this, but actually, I know lots of people in this situation. And at that time, I thought, well, what I need to do is, because I, at that time, had no intention of founding a separate organisation for this. At that time, I thought, what I need to do then is bring this to the attention of the large AIDS charities and say, this is an issue, this is a problem, you know, we need to think about it, we need to look at it. And what I found was, you know, back in 2014, when I started to talk about this, was that pretty much everybody said, oh, no, it's not an issue, it's not a problem, not really. You know, how is it any different for people who do have children? And at that point, I realised that if something was going to happen, I had to make it happen myself. And at that point, I was introduced to the fabulous Robin Hadley, who is here. And do take advantage of having Robin in the room, because he's a complete and utter, you know, full library of knowledge about this subject, which he's been studying for many, many years. Also to Mervyn Eastman, who I knew through my work at Age UK, and also to Jodie Day, who some of you will know from Gateway Women. And the four of us together founded what was the first iteration of AWOC. And our aims were really to, first of all, to encourage a lot more research, a lot more understanding of the issue, because at that time there wasn't really any understanding. It was quite sobering to come across, to not be able to find any evidence, because I'm quite a policy-based person. I tend to be, you know, like, well, what does the research tell us? You know, what do we know about this subject? And when I went looking, it was like, actually, we don't know an awful lot about this, because there's not an awful lot of research out there. And the research that was out there was almost entirely conducted in Europe and America and China. Virtually none of it, very like a handful of papers from the UK. So, you know, a lot of it was to say, you know, we need to ask questions, we need to understand, we need to talk to people. And then the second part of it was to encourage people aging without children to kind of talk to each other and to come together and to start thinking about, well, what can we do to help ourselves? What can we do to influence policy? What can we do to help people know more about this issue and understand it? And out of that, the very first Aging Without Children groups in York and in Leeds, that's when they happened. And I remember being in the cafe in Leeds with Jean and Sue back in 2015 and having these conversations then. So I really hope you have a great afternoon's conversation, you know, and that lots of learning and knowledge come out of it. We're still on the journey. I think we're an awful lot further forward than we were. There are a lot of people now don't dismiss aging without children as not a thing. Most people now go, yes, it's a thing. We don't necessarily know what to do about it, but we do totally agree that it is a thing that we need to think about. And that is a long way from where we were in 2014. So have a fantastic afternoon. I have to go back to the vaccination clinic, because part of my day job is coordinating volunteers at vaccination clinics. And you have a fantastic afternoon, and I look forward to seeing the recording on your channel soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Kirsty, it's amazing that this whole affair started with you having that light bulb moment. And I think it's amazing, and good on you, and keep up the good work. And now you're a charity, a trustee of a charity, and we can look forward to many more groups, with any luck, springing up around the country and actually carrying forward this support for people that is a huge gaping hole at the moment. So there you
Thank
go.
you. I'm going to have to dash, but thank you so much. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And straight over to me. Now, this is the interesting bit. Pin me again. Here I come. What I'm going to do is actually up in York, we have been going then since January 2016 with monthly meetings, and this during the lockdown and continuing on from during this virus-ridden time. We are actually meeting every Thursday morning at 11 o'clock on Zoom. And this, by the way, is my partner, Anne. And she is the pair of us are involved in this AWOCness. Because why are you involved in AWOCness?
Because you told me.
No.
Yes, I'm supportive of everything that's happened with AWOC.
And why are you an AWOC?
I'm an AWOC in England, but in Canada, I have 3 children and 5 grandchildren in Vancouver. But I support this absolutely.
So that you can be an AWOC if your children are a long way away, because they aren't round the corner to lend a hand in time of need. So that is one of the reasons that you can be an AWOC. You can be an AWOC because you chose not to have children, you couldn't have children, your children are disabled in some way, and they can't help you, or they have mental health problems, or they don't like you, and you don't like your children, or they've gone off to Australia or Scotland or wherever they've gone. They're not round the corner, or you don't want to be a burden on your children, so you're not going to ask them for help anyway. That makes you an AWOC. And the numbers quoted on people aging without children only take into account, oh, you haven't had any children. They don't take into account all these other reasons why people are AWOCs. So in fact, there are millions of AWOCs, and that's why we need that kind of peer support, because here we are at this level of age and people are popping off on us. And there is nobody at that second level of age to actually support us. There's a gaping hole here. There's a gaping hole. So what I'm going to do now is just share screen, because what I would like to inspire people to do is to start their own AWOC groups wherever you are in the country, to enable peer support to thrive in your area of the country. So I'm now going to share screen. This is a famous last words, isn't it? Here we are. So here we are, AWOC York, back in January 2016. Mind you, we didn't start our website till several years on. So this is probably done about 2018-19. However, we have now grown to having our own AWOC York website, and you will find out all about everything at www.awocyork.org.uk. And here we are, York 50 Plus Festival 2015. It is very useful to have a public event, a citywide or townwide or village-wide event going on that you can actually put an AWOC event into, because then you ride on all the publicity that's going on with that event. So here we are, 2nd of October 2015, the Aging Without Children event, telling them all about it, and come and find out if you think you're AWOC, or if you know anybody that's AWOC, come along. And that's how we gathered our first group of AWOCs, and it was the speaker was Robin Hadley, and he's with us this afternoon. So that was good. And the 50 Plus Festival, about 3,500 programs go out throughout the city. So people knew about it and they came to it. So that's useful to have a launch pad. Then you have to find a venue. So we found the Cross Keys pub and a very nice landlord who let us have their downstairs room for free, which was good because then we could come for lunch at 1 o'clock and then we could have our meeting from 2 to 4. Everything accessible. But go find somewhere that is going to be supportive of you and will let you have a free space on a regular basis. Then we lined up speakers. So from 2016, every month, second Wednesday of the month, we've had speakers like the fire service and the Later Life Hub. They have about 24 different organizations under their umbrella, ranging from financial and legal services to holidays to wine tasting. Well, anyway, there's a lot under, and they're all specifically geared to 50 plus people. So that's good to know about. Age UK, cashless society, that's something that we need to speak up about as older people, and being left out of the digital society as well. That's two things. National trust, well-being, getting your end of life plan actually done, being, and so on and so forth, living with dementia, anything that AWOCs might find helpful. That's basically it. Then we go into letting people know about it. So getting a flyer and carrying your flyers with you wherever you go, and giving them to chatting to people so that they know that it's going on. And we used to have every second Wednesday of the month, alternating in the afternoons 2 to 4 and the evenings. So January afternoon, February evening, 5:30 to 7:30, and then we went out for a curry or something after the evening meetings. But actually we've now stopped doing evening meetings. During the pandemic, we went on to Zoom, and we've only been Zooming in the afternoons. Second Wednesday of the month, 2 to 4, Zooming at Spark, York. And actually that's now turned into a hybrid meeting. So we get people meeting in person at Spark, York, and upstairs in the community room, and also hybrid. So we have people Zooming as well. Meet at 1 o'clock for those who are coming in person, and have lunch at the from the takeaway fast food outlets at Spark, York. It's a social meeting as well as having a speaker. Oh, and there we are. So we sit around, well, these were the early days. We sit around and introduce ourselves, first of all, and then that gives the speaker an idea of who we are as AWOCs, and so they can slant their talk to us. And then we have a talk, and then we, after the meeting, then we have a meeting of how much money we've got in the kitty, and what's been going on with everybody, and resources, swapping resources, etc. And then after the meeting, I make profuse notes and with a lot of resources, and send them out both via email and postal people. And those go out every month. And then in between now, we've actually got social meetings every Thursday morning at 11 o'clock on Zoom, and they are welcome. Everybody's welcome. Any AWOC anywhere around the country or wherever you happen to be is welcome to just chatting from 11 to about 12:30 on Thursday mornings at 11 on Zoom. So let me know if you'd like to be on that list. Okay. Oh, just to let you know that Anne and I have got a women's theatre company called the Real People Theatre, and we do shows for International Women's Week every year. And in 2018, we did No Kidding with all this jolly cast of women. And it was about aging without children. So out of that, we have now got 10 or 9 or 10 scenarios, which you'll see there, which we can use as springboards for talking about aging without children, like the loneliness of Sundays, when everybody else is meeting with their family or whatever. That's a spoof on a scam. My name is Brian. Oh, is it? Ah, and you want to help me with my computer, do you? Oh, all right. Yeah. So that's fun. In time of need, that's if you fall outside, what happens to you if you're taken to hospital and there's nobody at home looking after your cat. Scattered family, that's when your children go. They just go away. That's what they do. Then the grief of childlessness, that's when you can't have children and you're so sad about that. Under pressure is about, it's about telling your mum that you're not going to have children. You're going to be married, but you're not going to have children. Whoa, whoa. So that's quite fun. Correctional rape. Gerald talked about the fact that she was made to have children in Kenya because that's the thing that families do. Broody men, Robin. That was fun, and he's here today, so you can chat to him about that. And audience interactions. Oh, and here we all are. We took it around and about to all sorts of places for all sorts of people at festivals and for the Health and Wellbeing Board at the council and information fairs and one thing and another. So basically, it's all about spreading the word. Start as small as you like and go on from there. And it really, and Anne and I are in it because I've never had children, never wanted children. And so I can see the writing on the wall. I can see the writing on the wall. And therefore, it's not only me, it's all the AWOCs out there who have got this uncertainty about who's going to be there for them when they are in need. And AWOC hopefully will help to fill that gap. So there you are. So I'm now going to hand over to Jean.
I'm a person aging without children myself, not by choice, but in fact, I'm actually a person aging without any family support at all. So I'm an AWOC, AWFAS, I think. It doesn't sound so good as AWOC, but so I've no siblings, parents, partner, cousins, which makes it very cheap at Christmas, but it doesn't really do so much for you as you're aging. I had that light bulb moment that Kirsty talked about. I was a primary carer for my own mother for many, many years, and genuinely hadn't thought about the issue about myself until I realised when she was in her 90s how much I had to do, how dependent she was on me, particularly as an advocate for and an intermediate for dealing with agencies, doctors, etc., etc. Fortunately, at that time, and Kirsty mentioned it earlier, I read the article in The Guardian that Kirsty had written and was really surprised that the situation, that this light bulb that had struck with me as who was going to do this for me when I was older, that there were other people in the same or similar situations. So I contacted Kirsty, and as she said, Sue and Anne and myself and Monica, who's in our group, met up in Leeds in the Tal Cafe and started to talk about how this might work as a regional, at a regional level, as a local level, and so on. Kirsty was really good. She did a number of kind of fairly high profile events in Leeds at the Civic Hall, and she contacted the local authority. So she really, for us, kick-started it pretty well. We were lucky that that happened. But I then just contacted people I knew who, it started as simply as that, people who I knew who didn't have children. We followed up on the people who had gone to Kirsty's events and asked them if they were interested. And it ended up with about 15 people sitting in my dining room one night talking about how we could have an AWOC group. We're 7 years later now, and there are 4 of us in the steering group, and we've got no money. We didn't have any money at the start. We've still got no money. However, we've survived seven years without that. So whilst it's desirable if you're starting a new group to have funding, it's not, or hasn't been totally essential for us. We had a very clear focus for starters with our group, because we wanted to make sure that we were doing 2 things particularly: providing information for those people who were aging without children directly, but also working to influence those organisations in Leeds, of which there are many, who make provision for people. We had to be really clear at the start with the people we spoke to that we were not providers. We were signposting them, so we had to up our knowledge considerably of the sort of networks that were in Leeds, of which there are a lot. So we really made that our focus was information sharing, raising awareness with organisations. Since COVID, we've also focused more on the social areas that people wanted to be involved in, and people wanted to be in groups and meet each other again. And they wanted to come into a group where people weren't talking about their grandchildren all the time. It was really important for people. They said, oh, thank goodness we can find somewhere where somebody doesn't get their pictures of their grandkids out. So we actually did and have started little local groups and a more Leeds central social group. And they're going really well. We set up a Facebook page. We set up a website recently. And we keep a list of everybody who's attended the sessions that we put on. We ask their permission, obviously. We've run, up to COVID, we ran live sessions mainly. And we did them on things like power of attorney, making a will, staying independent at home, housing options, hospital discharge. That was a really key one. That was one that you know, who's your next of kin? I haven't got one. Yes, everybody's got one. No, I haven't. So that was, the hospital discharge was quite a key one. And we did that certainly up to COVID. Then we had to resort to Zoom, which is okay, but it's not my favourite medium. But we did that and we kept going. We always advertised our live sessions, and we did press releases, and we were lucky in 2019 that the BBC picked up one of our meetings and ran with it. We got a whole day of national coverage. We did local news, and we did at lunchtime. Kirsty rang me really excited because she realised we were going to get national coverage as well. I think they must have been short of something that day, but we got national coverage, and I had to go down to the BBC at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I did 8 BBC radio local stations interviews, one after the other. It was an interesting experience, and they interviewed me for a whole day in my home, which was salutary and way out of my comfort zone. However, that I don't know that the impact of that was great, but it did at least get us out there. We directly contact agencies if we're doing an event. We obviously contact we don't call them members because they're not really members at the moment. We have a contact group, a large contact group that we contact. And that's how we get interest going. We're members of Leeds Older People's Forum, which is a huge umbrella organisation in Leeds, which covers all the statutory and voluntary agencies in the area and has overall contact with all of them. So that's a really useful network for us. It doesn't happen in every authority, I'm aware of that. We also have 32 what's called neighbourhood networks, which are across the whole city. And it's our focus this year to infiltrate all those, as many as we can, of those neighbourhood networks, provide at least a leaflet, information, talk to them, do presentations wherever we can. This is just the 4 of us on the steering group, so it's, you know, we've got our work cut out. And last night we just had our steering group meeting, and we've done a 2-year strategic and operational plan for the next 2 years, which is partly to infiltrate these organisations. We've also linked up with a thing that's called Age Friendly Leeds, which is another organisation that we're infiltrating, and AdvoNet, which, because advocacy comes up over and over and over again in our local meetings as a key area of concern. Who will speak for me, basically? It underpins just about almost everything we do. So that's what we're going to be doing, and we're going to carry on with our social groups because we like them and we enjoy them, and we've got a really nice place in the West Yorkshire Playhouse that we can all meet up with, and we might even infiltrate the West Yorkshire Playhouse because they're a community-based, they've got community-based sort of objectives. So that's it, and we'll resort to live meetings. We have a good relationship with John Lewis, who provide us with a free, they do it in all their stores, a free pub to have meetings in. So John Lewis, we'll be back in December. So that's us really.
Over to Ida.
So I'm Ida, and I work for AWOCs Gloucestershire as the AWOC champion. So how I came about to be interested in this and learn more about aging without children is primarily because of that project, which was already lined out to look more at the experiences of people who are aging without children and trying to improve or support people to improve their social network to find that support that might be missing at times if you don't have family support. I've actually learned about aging without children before in university because I studied aging studies and gerontology, but it makes a great difference to hear real life experiences from people. So I feel like I truly now am passionate about this subject and this topic, and I try and speak about it wherever I can, since I had the chance to speak to people and hear about their experiences and hear their life stories. So that's made a massive difference. And yeah, so at AWOCs Gloucestershire, we started working on the topic of raising awareness for aging without children within the organisation last September, and have since started to try and spread out a little more. We're covering a whole county, so the process is sometimes a little slower than we wish. So what we're doing, we are speaking to other organisations, other groups. Whenever I get the chance to talk about it, I will speak about aging without children and point out the importance to be aware of the experiences of people who are without the support of children. And I think that's going quite well. A lot of people will say, oh yeah, that's important. I really agree. This is something we should think about more. And in the process of the last year, we've started to try and set up and facilitate a group where people can come together. We started off having online meetings, which weren't great. and have now started meeting in person once a month. And we're really lucky to rely on the network that AWOCs Gloucestershire has already. So we're using a facility that's used for one of our social groups already, who are very welcoming and accommodating, who give us some free tea and coffee and some cakes, which is always really lovely. Yeah, we're starting from there to work locally within the different towns and hopefully get more people interested. And I think one of our key roles is to get people informed. So as a champion for people aging without children, people can come to me, talk about it. I can signpost them to AWOC National. I can let them know about other things that are going on around the country to just inspire, I think, some ideas that they might want to come up with. And I also can rely on the resources that we have within the organization, within our help team. If someone has a question or has an issue that they might find difficult to resolve, then I'm really lucky to have some colleagues who are really good at helping with that. And so yeah, our plans for the future really are to get more people interested, to hopefully raise more awareness, to be more public. At the moment, we're mainly relying on the clients that we're speaking to share information. We use our social media channels and yeah, talking to other organizations. But I think important now is to step out of that and speak to people who are not within the system and who might not be in touch with other organizations, and yeah, support the group that's currently running to grow and do the things that they want to do. And yeah, so that's us from AWOCs Gloucestershire.
Lovely. And over to Hastings, April. Is there an April in the house?
Hello, yes. So unmuted and now ready to talk. It's been interesting listening to other groups because our group is very new. We started in March of this year in Hastings, and similar to what other people have said, it started with one of us, being me. I heard a radio program highlighting Kirsty Woodward, her experience, and it was from listening to that program that I became aware of the issues of AWOC. So I used an existing social group, which I was part of, just to test the waters and to start our group in Hastings, and it's gone on from there. So it's a very informal group. We are, as I said, we're very new, so we'll develop as things go on. And really our function is as a signposting group meeting. We meet about every 6 weeks, generally in the same place, but Hastings is full of places where local groups can meet up. And also we have very good provision in Hastings for social events. So our group is not really social. Its function is not social so much as signposting. And also I do, to get people to come along, a lot of it is word of mouth, and it's also advertising in our local community newspaper, which brings in new people, and they all have amazing knowledge. So it's very useful for me that I can give the meeting over to other people because their knowledge is so pertinent and so wide. So each meeting, just from the members who the people who turn up, we learn a lot. We learn a lot of things. Just to show you that in Hastings, for example, there are a lot of social groups. There's a lot of provision for older people, which I didn't know about before. But since setting up the AWOC group and going to various meetings and finding out about everything that is, there we are, that's actually says Older People's Day in Sussex. So just to give you a flavour, that Hastings has lots and lots of social groups for older people, and it seems to have very good provision for older people and for care. So our meetings have been very good for signposting, and as we continue, we'll see how our group develops. Yes, that's about it from Hastings for the moment. Thank you.
Lovely stuff. Okay, and we're getting now into Penny.
Hello, I'm Penny. I'm from East Kent, and just under a year ago, I think I found AWOC on Twitter and started following it, and it advertised a webinar about getting local groups started. And I thought, that sounds interesting. I'll go along and sit in the background and listen to what people are saying and so on. So I signed on for the webinar, and only to discover it was a fairly select gathering in which they started by going around where everybody's saying, where are you from and what are you interested in, which just wasn't what I had in mind at all. I was there to passively listen. Anyway, after that, Paul chased me up and said, would you start a local group? Are you interested in starting a local group? And I said, yes, but not on my own. And so AWOC nationally started tweeting a bit and advertising that there was interested in getting a local group started in East Kent. And my now colleague Amanda, who had been following AWOC for a while, and who actually lives relatively close to me, came out of the woodwork. And the two of us have been getting AWOC East Kent off the ground ever since. We are looking for more steering committee members. We've had an ad on the local volunteering website for the last few months, but without any success from that, although it doesn't surprise me because in my experience, people get involved when you tap them on the shoulder, as Paul tapped me on the shoulder. But we have got people, as a result of our publicity work, we are slowly adding people to our mailing list. And currently we're in the situation where we have a mailing list. We have a newsletter, which we started at the beginning of September, an online newsletter, in which we're planning to do monthly. And we're going to start our in-person meetings from late October onwards. We cover 5 districts of East Kent, so quite a wide catchment area to start with to make sure we can get critical mass. And with the expectation that over time, we may separate into at least 5 separate groups, one for each district in East Kent, but we'll see how it works. We have no particular expectations as to how it will evolve. But the nice thing about being East Kent wide is we're not competing with the very active, more locally based groups that are existing, as well as everybody else says, we're in the business of peer support, information and campaigning, not of service delivery. The other thing we've been doing is networking with the various support groups that are out there already, and it's been really quite interesting because I think the conversation has moved on since 2014, because unlike Kirsty's experience, our experience is you talk to people about aging without children, or you say, I'm from Aging Without Children East Kent, and the reaction is, ooh, that sounds interesting. Yes, that is important. I'd never thought of it before, but now you mention it, I immediately get it. And the other thing that people have consistently said to us, that is an interesting one, I think, is this is wider than people who have never given birth or who have never participated in the experience of giving birth. Because actually the way social change is happening, children are more likely to be in Australia or Canada or the other end of the country, or they will, you know, they've got a busy job and they're based in Liverpool, and they come and visit mum on the South Coast once a year, and are great while they're there. And then they say, God, I'm so glad you've got a local Age UK looking after you. Bye, see you next year, or see you next holiday season. And therefore, the number of people who are aging without children, in fact, is much greater than the number who have, you know, do not have biological children. I think in campaigning terms, that can be quite problematic, because I think if you are a politician of a certain ilk, you will say, well, tough luck that the children live in Liverpool. The children ought to step up to it. And what I think is really important for us is to really say, well, it's all very well to talk about personal choice and people not wanting to, children not wanting to step up, and parents not wanting to be reliant on their children and so on. But you need to take account of the increasing number of people for whom that just isn't an option. That it's not about twisting someone's arm. There is not an arm there to twist. And I do think that's an important part of the messaging. And then the other bit, which says, well, anyway, it ought to be about choice and voluntary involvement and so on, is a sort of second level argument. But it's quite startling if you look at some of the stats about childlessness and percentage childlessness of women by age, and you see quite rapidly how this is an evolving issue. And I suspect one of the reasons that it's more centre of mind now than it was in 2014 is that just between women who were born in 1945 and women who were born in 1965, the percentage of childlessness doubled from 10% to 20%. And that's significant. And those are the women that are now moving into older age. Final comment, because I'm talking for too long, is campaigning. I think campaigning for us is an important part of the mix. And the challenge is how you do the campaigning in a way that is friendly and constructive, not standing outside with a banner shouting, you're doing it all wrong. But what we keep noticing is little situations in which people who are AWOC are disadvantaged. The one from earlier this week was one of the local Age UKs in our patch, who tweeted, "We are respecting the Queen, the Queen's funeral, by closing our day centre on the day of the funeral, and thereby requiring people without families to watch the funeral alone, in their own homes, without any sort of emotional or other support." And I kind of queried this with them, and they said, our trustees put up the interests of our clients before everything else, and we thought they would want privacy. Now, I doubt that they will want privacy, but at the same time, I don't want to alienate that particular Age UK local branch. And then later in the week, we started to plan our December meeting, and the question came up was, because we're meeting on the last Wednesday of the month, do we have a meeting between Christmas and New Year? And our answer was yes, absolutely. And the thing I was always conscious of when I was a carer, which, like most people, that's how I got into this, was the degree to which the aging support organisations at a national level will campaign about loneliness at Christmas, and a local level will close on Christmas Eve and open again the day after New Year's Day. And so I'm kind of trying to think now about how do you do a constructive Twixtmas campaign? So how do you ensure, how do you gently encourage people that, recognizing that some older people will want to spend the time between Christmas and New Year with their family, but there are an awful lot of other people for whom the Christmas New Year shutdown basically condemns them to 10 days of isolation. And what are the creative mutual solutions to that not just the sort of stop your staff spending Christmas with their families. So lots to work on, and lots of things like that, which are not big problems, but are sort of iconic problems, symptomatic of the way AWOCs are disregarded. Sorry, Sue, I've spoken for too long.
No, I mean, it's fascinating, and we're all coming from different directions. So that's fascinating. I mean, it really is. Okay, who do we have next? Oh, I think we're zooming across to America.
We are. So I loved that, and I really I was really taken by the term Twixtmas, right? That so very important to remember that. We see that over here on this side of the ocean as well. So I'm an AWOC because I have no children. I've never had children. And as so many of you have spoken about today, this is an issue that isn't always considered, discussed, really even thought much about. And one day I was speaking with a neighbor who had just returned from spine surgery. And we were talking about his concerns about care, and because he doesn't have any children. And I thought, poof, I don't have any children. Oh, well, many people don't have children, either actual or accessible or available, right? And our group is just in the early stages of planning. But I want to start a group because of the difficulties some of the people in my life have experienced, and how I have witnessed these gaps of care that are made even wider by the social assumptions, including this assumption that as an older person, we must have younger people in our lives who can easily bridge those gaps, right? Certainly someone can take us to the grocer, or someone can pick up our prescription, or someone can take us to the doctor, or someone can take us to our neighbor. And that's not true. That's just not true. And we are building upon the idea that we had an earlier initiative called 1 Square Mile, which connected older people who live rurally to services and to each other. So AWOC really goes hand in hand with that. And I want to start an AWOC group for people who are aging without children, because care schemes in the US are really lacking. And there are these huge disparities between people who have access to healthcare and people who do not. And this is true historically and programmatically, that these gaps in care are expected to be filled by family members, right? And in most cases, that's assumed to be children. So because of that, this group seeks to meet the needs of people living in rural areas. It will meet in person, because technology where we live is not always available or trusty. And our county, the county where this is going to be taking place, continues to emerge from this fog of COVID. And it has really become apparent at how important human connection has become. So this group, I believe, is one of the few things that can help support consistent social connections. So to start, I've gone to where the people are, to their homes, to we have a local breakfast restaurant, to the library, which is a big hub of activity in our county, and to the post office and the local McDonald's, where people seem to always hang out in the morning having coffee and an egg McMuffin or two. So this interest is built through snowballing, right? Where someone will tell someone, and someone will tell someone, and someone will tell someone else, because there's so much collective wisdom, and that sharing is essential for the community. So in my day job at the university, I'm able to connect with different departments and colleges, and we're working toward establishing a certification as an age-friendly university. And part of that is to help connect people intergenerationally. right? So we're doing that. So in a nutshell, we're working to develop a flagship group that will serve as a hub of information, support, a home for what we call caring callers, who are volunteers who sort of say, hey, how's it going? Right? How did you make it through the storm? Do you need anything? That kind of thing. And that comes from a group actually of the same name in Australia, Caring Callers. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done everywhere. And it's well past time to begin. And what we do first and best through these connections that we have now together and virtually is that we continue to build. And we're going to do this through research, including case studies and qualitative studies that help provide this deeper understanding of the complexities that are faced by people who are aging without children. And that includes all of us and me and a lot of people that I have yet to know and love. So thanks for letting me speak. Sue, to you.
Lovely to have you. Just to say that is amazing, and warm applause to everybody who has contributed to the video. I'd just like to say, don't forget that LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people are the majority of us are aging without children. And also bear in mind the number of people who get dementia. And if you are a person who is aging alone, that and your health, actually, it's your health and dementia and your mental health and your physical health. It's very important that we are not left on our own. You know, there's all this loneliness and depression and isolation and everything and so on and so forth. AWOCs are one of the major groups in that, and we need to spread the word about AWOC and about aging without children. And I'm just wondering if we ought to finish there. All right, I'll keep recording because Neil wants to speak words of wisdom. Over to you, Neil.
Thank you, Sue. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, Sue's just stolen my thunder slightly because as a aging gay man, the issue of AWOC is very high on our agenda. As Sue quite rightly said, the majority of us are aging without children, possibly through choice. But of course, there are members of the community these days, high-profile members like Elton John and Tom Daley, who are aging with children. And of course, gay couples can now do that. But for people of my age, that was never possible. And possibly we didn't want any in any case. We also have the issue that we're most probably very remote from our families. Some of us that have come out have lost our families. We call that bereavement. Bereavement isn't always about the loss of somebody dying. It's also about the loss of your family shunning you because you are what you are and you can't help the way you're made. So it's very important that we do bear that in mind. I'm lucky my families are okay, but all my nearest and dearest I live in Ripon in North Yorkshire. All my family live down south of England. So therefore I'm really aging on my own. But on the other hand, I have a very good chosen family. So I think we need to bear that in mind. It's not always about biological families. There's always some things about chosen families. And the other thing I'd like to touch on, which Sarah from South Carolina raised, is about the rural issues, especially in North Yorkshire. It is the largest county in England. It is extremely rural, has very poor transport connections, very poor IT connections. Mobile phones are not usable, especially in the Dales and out on North York moors. So some of the communities become very isolated. AWOC is exceptionally good in towns and cities like in York, where Sue and Anne are, but for us further out, getting to talk and mix with like-minded people is not easy. I mean, Sue, bless her, I mean, she said there that she encourages people to join. I would say she normally gets a gun to her head to join. But she's very good at that, bless her. She's very good at that, and she does it in a very good way. And she's very much a driving force for AWOC in York and North Yorkshire. But yes, it isn't easy, and I'm not saying that I feel isolated. I don't in any way, but there are those of our community, the LGBT community, that are totally isolated, have very little support, and we are quite a large proportion of AWOCs. Thank you.
Okay, and over to Alexander.
I've put up on the chat the British Red Cross National Support Line, which links in with all the resources of the British Red Cross for emotional support, practical support, local tactical teams for practical help, independent living, all that sort of thing. I think you might find that's a very useful resource, that phone number.
That's excellent. Okay, Red Cross. Okay. Robin, do you want to say you're our resource, you're our hidden resource?
I'm putting the thumbs up, just appreciating what people are saying. So it's Paul who I think wants to say something.
Okay, Paul.
Thanks, Sue. Just a few quick sort of observations. First of all, thank you very much for organising this as part of the York 50 Plus Festival, because I think it's a great thing to be doing, because I think, as Kirsty said before, it took her a long time to get to the point where people realised that AWOC was actually a thing that needed addressing, and what we're doing now is building on what she's done and getting that movement going again, and actually coming up with solutions. From the national point of view, I mean, there's 5 of us on the trustee board. We're all volunteers, and what we've been looking at is several strands of work. So we are looking at more research, how we can build that evidence base. We are trying to look at the national policy scene, although that is quite crowded, and what with COVID and Brexit and everything else that's been going on politically, it is difficult to get to that, to get the airtime there. But I mean, I was really pleased that Jenny, one of our trustees, and Professor Mo Ray were on Women's Hour. Was it I think 3 weeks ago, and we had a fantastic reaction off the back of that. Loads of people emailing, loads of people wanting to be on our mailing list. So that's the sort of thing we want to keep going with, and just to keep getting the profile up. But the main thing I want to talk about, I really want to mention and say thank you about, is to all of the local groups, because when we reinvigorated AWOC again in the sort of January of 2021, there was 4 local groups. We've now got 9, and we've got a few others that are sort of interested as well. And what's coming through from the conversation this afternoon, I mean, there's several things. First of all the groups are different, and they all give different things depending on the needs of the AWOC people locally. And the second thing that really gets to me is that they are making that case locally that AWOC is continuing to be a thing. So they're providing that support, but as well as that, they are integrating with all the communities. The fact that this is part of the York 50 Plus Festival is fantastic. So Sue, well, we all know Sue very well. We all know that she's involved in every committee going in York. I think is that true? Sue?
Yes,
just about, pretty much definitely. Just about. So. I mean, we joke, but actually it's a really important thing to mention, because Penny's talked about it, Jean's talked about it as well. Getting involved in the local voluntary sector and with the local AWOCs and the local CVSs, it just means that people look at it and go, oh, okay, right, it's a thing, we need to do it. So you're building awareness without actually bashing people's doors down and trying to be too vociferous about it. So from our point of view, the increase of the local groups is a really important way of both keeping the support for people who are aging without children, but also raising that awareness with the public and with policymakers as well. So that's what we're focusing on nationally. But it's very great to be involved, and I think thank you, Sue, for organising it this afternoon.